A very good evening and welcome to On the Spot. Charles Mangushampagi sitting in for Patrick Kamara. And tonight we have a special guest in retired Colonel Dr. Kizza Besigye, former presidential candidate and former president of the Forum for have you on the spot.
Thank you very much, and very good evening to all the viewers and listeners out there.
We'll be discussing a rather convoluted topic, which is on the political pulse in the country. Resolving Uganda's elusive political settlement is what we'll be looking at. Many researchers, especially political researchers, will argue and say that if you see the kind of insecurity, the government's attempts to deal with emergencies like food crisis, droughts, water for irrigation, the health sector, the education sector, they are tied to a grand one central root, which is the management of the politics of the country. So we'll tackle different things around security, around drought, around the mobilization efforts, and then we'll look at the centrality of the political question and how a political settlement can be achieved in this country. Let me start with a recent development, which is you recently participated in a by-election in eastern Uganda with a fairly strong candidate and were not successful. And someone raised the question and say, is Uganda's opposition really ready? In this particular case, the Forum for Democratic Change, to take advantage and build numbers to try and create a political balance in this country?
Yeah, well, I have said many times before that elections that are not held in a free and fair environment can never be a mechanism for assessing the strength or otherwise of contestants. Because, you know, the whole election can actually be swindled wholesale. You could even have a candidate declared with 100%, and you've seen indeed in situations where leaders are elected with 99.9%, that is the vote somebody has got. It's ridiculous. So once there is fraud, once the election is not reasonably free or fair, then you cease to engage in how to use it to assess whether, you know, a candidate is strong, whether he's ready or whatever. And of course, you know, some of our rather simplistic analysts sometimes say, but you win in some places, so why do you win in some places and you fail to win in others? It means that where you win, it has the same challenges as those where you fail. So eventually, it is simply your failure. No, every election is different from another. First of all,
I was risking your description of simplistic, being a simplistic analyst, because I'm going to ask the question, how do you account for a different result in Aru North?
Yeah, this is what I'm saying.
Kamuli municipality, for example.
Yeah, this is what I'm saying. Every situation is unique in its own way. It's driven by different dynamics. The interest of the regime is different in whether they really want to have it or not to have it. In some cases, don't forget, the regime also is interested in creating the impression that, you know, there is some...
You can win some and lose
yes, some. It's in their interest that they... So there are different dynamics that drive, and you see it indeed in terms of what happens on the ground. In some elections, you think that there is a war situation where the election is taking place.
That drives me exactly where this discussion should be going. We're talking about a political settlement and what would it take. And the big question, when talk of a possibility of a dialogue between yourself and President Yoweri Museveni, you did comment about it. The government did respond to the question. The question was, in the circumstances in which the Ugandan opposition finds itself, and former presidential candidate Kizza Besigye finds himself, what is it that would push? What is your trump card? What do you have against, for example, President Yoweri Museveni, that can get him to make concessions, to sit down and have a discussion with you?
Well, first of all, let me say this, that you've rightly said there is a serious and resolved political question in the country. And that is reflected indeed in the fact that since independence, no leader has ever handed over power peacefully to another. That every change of leadership has been mediated by bombs and violence. That is a terrible situation. And one of the things that drives that is that power is controlled by a few people. The rest of the country has been marginalized. So there has been always a struggle between the marginalized seeking to assert themselves and remove those who are controlling, who are monopolizing and dominating the society. And that is why the institutions of government that would normally, in a normal functioning political system, institutions of government should have the capacity to mediate between citizens of different formations and interests. There would be no need for a special mediatory process for, like what you are describing, a dialogue. A dialogue comes into question because the institutions of state cannot mediate the contradictions within the society. And the reason that happens is because the institutions of state are not representative of the society. They are representative. They represent and are controlled by the few who monopolize power.
If we know that,
so the people of Uganda have been struggling against this, and you're asking what the levers are that will force a situation where there is dialogue. The thing is that once there is popular discontent is, and of course the question is the injustice that causes that discontent. That discontent will eventually render the few who are monopolizing power not to function. You are asking yourself about what is going on in the country, the insecurity. Why is there insecurity? Insecurity comes, whether you like it or not, when there is injustice. And it starts with political injustice in this case, where people are not involved in making the decisions that are being made. The resources of the country are not used fairly for those resources, and opportunities in the country are not used fairly for all. Then people start agitating. And that agitation has been going on. So don't think that what you saw, for example, in the last election is something that came of its own. You saw literally a national demonstration all over the country.
But Dr. Besigye, someone watching you now will say, you're singing an old tune. You've said these things before, they haven't led to any significant shift. And the question I put to you earlier is, if Yoweri Museveni were to be convinced to agree to a sit down with you, what is it that he stands to gain that if he didn't sit down to talk to you or any other formations opposed to him will impact his hold on to power?
You see, the reason he will come to talk to us is because it's not tenable to continue holding power the way he is.
What is the
If
evidence?
it was tenable, there is no reason why he would want to talk to us.
He seems to be in a quite comfortable position, isn't he?
Then there will be no dialogue.
Yes.
Once he is in a comfortable position, forget about dialogue. If he is in an uncomfortable position, then and not just even uncomfortable, untenable, I would like to say. For there to be dialogue, he would be actually in an untenable position.
What conditions exist?
And therefore,
yes.
you ask, what would cause his position to be
untenable or uncomfortable?
You see, what are the sources of his power? The sources of his power is force. The force he used to capture power. The military, the coercive instruments. That is his first source of power. The second source of power are resources that he captured with that source, with that force. The resources, therefore, he uses to rent support, to buy support, to compromise people, to offer favors, and so on. That is his second source of power. The third source of power is control of institutions that he uses to do all kinds of things. And control of information, that people listen only to what he says, which is the reason, of course, they do everything in their power to minimize our ability to reach and talk to people. These are the sources of power. Once these sources weaken, then his power is untenable.
So let's discuss those four as you have outlined them.
Yes.
From what any casual observer would see, he seems to have all those in his pocket. Family.
Yeah, that would be indeed a very, very casual observer and not a serious one. First of all, on the coercive instruments, if the threat that he faces vis-a-vis his instruments of coercion was not big, why would he be daily expanding the forces that he seeks to use to control that power?
He's just gone through a successful transition of the command structure of the military. He's discarded almost everyone from your from your generation, and he's brought in young people.
You see, that does not say anything in terms of the efficacy, the effective control that gives him. Let me tell you, you have and these are interlinked, of course. You have all these. Look at the elections in 2016. If he was in control, why do you find that in the major encampments where the security was, he lost?
Maybe that explains the change.
What would that inform him? That he therefore should trust the people he has armed? No. And that explains to you why even now, since the election, there are all those things you are talking about, all those changes, because they are related. They are related.
Don't you think he deserves some credit that he's seen through them, not once, not twice, retires generals, retires colonels, captains, and there is no threat, direct threat to his power?
Again, if you are analyzing deeper, it's not just a question of whether you are able to change leaders. It's a question of whether there is loyalty of that force to what you are doing.
If your objective, just a moment, Colonel. If the grand objective is to hold power and hold it for as long as possible, if the grand objective is to control resources and control them for as long as possible, wouldn't you say President Museveni has succeeded in that, and because he has succeeded in that, he has little motivation to sit down with you or anyone else in a dialogue?
As I have said, as long as he has effective control of those sources of power, there will be no dialogue. If he feels comfortable that all those, and every dictator indeed sets out to maintain that control. Every dictator, without doubt, eventually fails. And the failure is progressive and eventually comes to a head. So my analysis may be different from yours or others who are watching this, but clearly why do you think even now, as we talk, there is an attempt at training all kinds of crime preventers? You know, the kinds of, and part of the insecurity indeed we are facing is as a result of that. We trained LDUs all over the country. Nobody knows where they are. We trained special police constables. So many, those who were filling all these stadiums, nobody knows where they are. We trained the Kalangara action plan of Kakoza Mutale. All these are instruments to try and contain, and instruments of coercion. These are forces of coercion. We've been training crime preventers. Even as we talk, that is going on all over the country. Nobody knows what they are doing. So, in spite of all that, as I have said, you find that actually if you put the test of what they believe, whether they believe in the system or not, you find that they don't. So it's for everyone to analyze the way they want. My analysis is that the control of the coercive forces is definitely much, much weaker. And I wouldn't, you know, I have said this again many times, and some people say you've been saying it hasn't happened. How it plays out is for all to eventually see. Secondly, I told you the resources. Again, some people have been saying the economy is growing, the economy is strong, we have no problem. It's for anybody to run with.
I think a lot of recent analysis will tell you that the economy is clearly weak. The Bank of Uganda issued its latest monetary policy statement this week, and I think on Tuesday, and it indicates a scaling down of projected growth rates. But the question there would be, are the people you're relying on, you talked about it as, I think, the second pillar, how the people feel about this whole thing. Are the people in sync with these frustrations? Can they turn that frustration into adequate political agitation? But I'm afraid we need to take a quick commercial break. And I just needed to mention, I forgot, I should have mentioned at the beginning, the media fraternity is mourning with the family of Alex Jakana, who lost his wife. She formerly, Penny formerly worked at Radio 1. She also worked, I think, at UBC and worked at the Uganda Communications Commission, and she passed on at a hospital in Seattle, the United States. Seattle, Washington, that would be correct. People think about Washington, D.C. She passed on, and our condolences go out to the family, both the family here and Jakana, who represented Uganda quite well, working for the BBC after he left Uganda, and then had since moved on to the United States for about the last 1.5 years, where he's met this tragedy. And Penny leaves behind very young children, fairly young children, and so our condolences to the family. We'll be right back after a short commercial break. Welcome back to On the Spot, featuring retired Colonel Dr. Kizza Besigye, and we're discussing political settlement, which has remained Uganda's most elusive question. I've seen people sharing today President Museveni's comments in his earlier years, and what was called the Nairobi Peace Talks of 1985, I think. You had the most successful ones like the Moshe Conference, which brought some real changes. But people have been asking the question, what is it? You outlined some 4 issues earlier that would necessitate a political dialogue, the objective conditions. And the question is, do they exist in reality in Uganda? Can they be turned into something that gets the principals to sit down and have a discussion? Maybe I'll add a third question to that. Who are the principals that should be sitting in a discussion that resolves Uganda's political question?
First, maybe let me also use this opportunity to extend condolences to the family and friends of Jakana. Our heartfelt condolences indeed. Secondly, I think on the sources of power, I omitted another important source, which is legitimacy, popular legitimacy. Even every dictator requires a level of popular legitimacy, and that's why indeed they have to invest in persuasion through propaganda. Every dictator spends a lot of money on propaganda to have people who believe what they say. The believers are the ones who render popular legitimacy. So one needs a level of legitimacy. May not be high, but some level of legitimacy. We are just saying, how these have been depleted. The ability to rely on force, how it has been depleted, and how therefore they have to keep on relying on mobilizing as wide and wider forces which they cannot control, which they cannot maintain, which therefore eventually become a problem in themselves, as indeed they are becoming a problem. They cannot meet their welfare, they cannot meet the expectations they gave, so they eventually actually become a problem. Even in the last election, those crime preventers they had mobilized and trained and so on, some of them were quite useful to us. So that is, these are the areas that,
are you telling our viewers that some crime preventers worked for you?
Oh, without doubt. I mean, and including some, higher up in the echelons of the organization. But that is not just in crime preventers, that is in all the forces, because there is disgruntlement. Forget about, there is no doubt that there is disgruntlement in the forces. You've seen how even the former forces of the police have had a very tough time stopping me from doing what I want. Where do you think I get information from?
Is that
they waylay me here, I still know where they are, I just avoid them. So
is that a result of collaborators? Is it a result of fatigue?
Whatever you call it, it's a result of the effectiveness of that machinery going down, a depletion of the effectiveness. Secondly, we were talking about the resources available to the dictator to do all the kinds of things that they would want to do. That, to my mind, is definitely down. To the extent, indeed, that now we have a situation where millions of Ugandans are completely without food. And there is no response that the regime can give. You've seen them doing very, foolish things like stopping us from delivering, food relief to people who are extremely hungry. These are the kinds of, so you were asking...
The images also from
yes, you're asking whether, all these amount to something that can cause a problem to the regime. Of course. But you have all these millions of people whose frustration every day increases. And that is, how, this Egyptian situation before it backfired on Mr. Mubarak. He had just fixed an election with over 80% of the vote. So, again, casual observers who are simplistic, as I said, would have gone away with the feeling that Mubarak is in charge. People actually still want him. The opposition is weak, disorganized, can't do anything. His forces are, are in charge. He had more than 500,000 troops, and so on and so forth. But that, because, the changes within the population, the changes within the politics are not dramatic. The awareness that is going on in the Ugandan population is not something that you will wake up and say, oh, Ugandans are now far more aware than they were yesterday. It's like the growth of a child. You don't see it, but it is there. It's real, and it's a lot every day.
Does this suggest, Dr. Besigye, that you have settled to a protracted struggle rather than what sometimes you have described as a tsunami, which didn't happen?
You see, again, it's a misunderstanding. Even where a tsunami comes, it's not that it has not been building up. Eventually, what you see is the sum total of a long period of activities that have been going on without being noticed. As I have said, shortly before Mubarak got problems, everybody could have thought that there is stability, there is peace, there is, he'd been there for 30 years and, things are in control. That is exactly what you are looking at here. And so, the judgment call is that of the regime. Quite often, they fail to make the judgment call when the time has come that they can no longer contain this. When they fail to make the judgment call, then quite obviously things will gather and will overwhelm them, and they will have no say or choice in what goes on after that.
A lot of the
that is something that will happen if the regime does not make the correct judgment call. It will definitely be, overwhelmed by all these mounting changes that are taking place within the strike.
You're looking at what exists on the other side, and someone will turn back and say, look, take a critical self-assessment, especially of those of you either in activism or in the political position. See, the level of organization, the level of focus, and the assessment of what someone would call a SWOT analysis of the political position or the activists for change. Do you feel comfortable where the opposition, including the party you belong to, the Forum for Democratic Change, the older parties, Uganda People's Congress, the Democratic Party, the state in which they are, that you have sufficient infrastructure or at least organization that can deliver you to a discussion table, if at all that was what was necessary?
I have absolutely no doubt that we have the necessary organizational, competencies to not only cause the changes that we want to cause, but that it has been demonstrated. Don't think that it's a small feat to organize nationally the kind of support and indeed demonstrable support, which I have been saying we have evidence of in the whole country under the conditions in which we are. But that we are able to organize nationally in spite of the repression, in spite of all this, and actually win an election. And we have evidence of that, which is the reason indeed we have been making the assertion that this must be resolved, the election must be resolved. And if we were not a threat at all, what would have caused the military or the kind of forceful overthrow of the election? Because don't forget, from the 19th of February last year, I was under illegal detention, unconstitutionally. We have even a court ruling. We have a court ruling to show.
I hear you on that.
Yes.
I hear you on that.
So if we were weak, if we had no competencies of organizing and of causing the changes that we were working for. What would cause a regime to put itself in that kind of a situation that it violates the constitution blatantly in the full view of everybody in the country and internationally?
Don't you think by that analysis you contradict yourself when you say you describe the same regime as a dictatorship,
yes,
and then you say what would cause it to violate the constitution?
Yes.
Of course, a dictatorship, if that is what it is, would be expected not to work within the constitution. The question is, you have spent May, which is next month, will be an anniversary since the President Museveni was sworn in again for to keep on to keep his hold onto power, saying you won the election, an election you won that didn't deliver you to power.
Doesn't matter.
Politically, doesn't
matter.
Yes.
The question is how we pursue that people's will. Because don't forget, there was a controversial election in 1980.
Mm-hmm.
Many people, including myself, believe that DP won. Its victory was robbed. The question then is what you do once the victory has been robbed. Because we have no forces to stop use of force
to steal an election,
mm-hmm. like they did. But we can respond. And there are two mechanisms of response.
Mm-hmm.
Like Museveni responded in 1980 and went to the bush, and then the DP followers, whose election had been stolen, followed Museveni in the bush.
And kept quiet.
Because their leader had taken a turn they did not associate with. They associated with Museveni to go and challenge the outcome of that election. The result in the event was that after 5 years, those who had taken over power were no longer in power. This is exactly what happened last year. We have taken a decision to challenge it, to struggle against it. That's why we have formed the people's government. We are busy working every day. We have an agenda.
Hold it a moment.
We have a structure.
Yes, hold it a moment there. The reaction to a stolen election in 1980, that election was December 10th, 1980. By the 6th of February, you had a response.
Yes.
And as you will argue, that effort was effective. 4 years later, that government had collapsed.
Yes.
The government that stole the election.
Yes.
Then you have that transition of the coup,
yes,
which also a few months later is not in power.
Yes.
You have claimed your election was stolen.
Yes, and we are doing something about it.
You say you have decided to oppose,
yes,
challenge
absolutely
that result.
Absolutely. Until the will of the people is restored.
Yes. Do you still have those people behind you?
Well,
are they there?
Without doubt. Why do you think that each time I go out they are trying to stop me? Why?
Mm-hmm.
You saw what happened when I was trying to go to Kayunga.
You
saw what happened when I was going to you saw what happened when I was going to Nakaseke.
Haven't they been largely successful in containing you where you
are,
defining your limits?
You see again, you don't understand the nature of our struggle. The nature of our struggle now is that we don't use force to fight force. Our struggle, nonetheless, is very effective. The other day when I went to Ngora, in Teso, again, they mobilized Asumani Mugenyi, who is now, I understand, in charge of operations, moved from Kampala with his forces to go and stop me from going to Ngora. They blocked roads, Eventually, I was in Ngora. They had to come and find me there and tear gas the people of Ngora. The kind of resources they used just to deal with me, one person moving with my old vehicle, just using maybe 200,000 shillings, they may have spent $1 billion.
Mm-hmm.
That is how you deplete the resources of the regime while you are strengthening the people. The people of Angola are stronger We passed through Palisa. You should have seen what was in Palisa. So the question you're asking, whether people are still with us, is a matter that I don't have to talk for myself.
I hear you.
It speaks for itself.
I hear you. To what effect?
So the effect is this, that one, you have to expand that, diminish the legitimacy, which I told you is one of the sources of power. The legitimacy of Mr. Museveni has been plummeting every day. Mm-hmm. It's almost on the ground. He's now almost remaining simply using bare force, and he realizes it. I'd like to give him credit that he must appreciate the kind of trouble in terms of the sources of his power that he's dealing with. Mm-hmm. So popular legitimacy continues to plummet, and that is through our activities of causing people to be aware. Mm-hmm. Giving them information through difficulties, but we get there, give them information, embolden them to show them that we can stand up to this bully. They can fire tear gas, they can fire live bullets, they can do what, and our people become more emboldened and more stronger. This is a gradual process. Mm. So, as I have told you, we have now a situation where the economy is on its knees, where the people that are in the bureaucracies themselves now, which is another source of power, in the institutions, they are themselves now despondent.
Do you feel concerned, Dr. Besigye, that you can celebrate an economy on its knees when the actual victims of an economy on its knees are the people who support you?
Without doubt.
Yes.
But you see, there is nothing that can change without pain, because the economy cannot work for them. Mm-hmm. Whether it's on its knees or not on its knees, it doesn't work for them. It works for a few people. And that is part of the problem. You see, you are talking about, I said, insecurity and injustice are two sides of the same coin. Look at what has been going on in the city here. All these people that have been thrown out of their jobs in the park yard, along the railway line where they were working from, their kiosks destroyed and so on. All these people were supporting the economy. Mm-hmm. Now, they could have remained economically active even if you wanted to shift where they were working from or what they were doing, but that is not seen as a good thing, because again the population fears these people crowding in the city. So they think that a solution for them is to break them down so that they don't, you saw what happened in Kiseka market had to be demolished. All those people who were earning livings there, the park yard, they have all been demolished. There is now these concrete things coming up. So the economy does not work for them. And the responses of the regime, which result from the fear of the people, is what further weakens the economy.
Yes.
And as it weakens the economy...
it doesn't build the politics, does it?
No. What it does is that it makes the dictator have far less capacity to sustain the dictatorship. No, because he needs to rent support, he has no money to rent that support.
He has enough in a desperate situation like the one you're describing. There is enough to rent, because you'll find that majority of the people, rather than turn that frustration into political activism, they resign themselves to the situation in which they are.
Yes,
if Dr. Besigye moves through downtown Kampala, of course they will stand up and wave the two-finger sign and cheer you on. But then
so why do you think I'm not left to do that without interference?
Because the
if they have resigned.
Yes, because the coercive forces you talked about are still available.
Yes, why? Why, if the people have resigned, why would they? What about them? You just waving their fingers? Would their fingers throw them out of power?
No, you could remobilize that frustration. But Jose Nwabine watching us says, Dr. Besigye, has it ever dawned on you that you are actually one of the people who have entrenched President Museveni in power and spoiled his retirement plan? And I can assure you, for as long as you are still aspiring to replace Museveni, to replace him, just know he will always be around because he is safer that way. And he adds, Doctor, wouldn't you make a more meaningful contribution if you went and contested as an MP somewhere in Rukunjiri or elsewhere? Because we have more slots for MPs than for president. We can only have one president at a time, and yet we have more than 400 MPs. Must you be president to make a contribution? Jose Nwabine, I believe he's in Kabola, the Antonde. Would you respond to him?
Yeah, well, first of all, please understand, this is not certainly about Besigye. This is about the people of Uganda who are dominated. Some people want to put their heads under the sand, you know, and say that, you know, if Besigye was not there, Museveni maybe would retire and things would go on. If surely Museveni is scared of retiring because of Besigye, then I think he must be recognizing, and those who believe in that must be recognizing that Museveni must be a very weak person. Because why, I mean, what would Besigye do simply because Museveni has retired? Because you see, what they are saying is that actually I have the support to make me a president, and if he retires I would be a president, and he would be worried that I would revenge maybe against him, which is the reason he wants to fight to his death to stop me from being a president. Now, that, first of all, is I think is an admission that he has lost popular mandate, popular legitimacy, that he has to stop by force, that if you know, he relinquishes, then our forces will be taking over power and he will be in trouble. So first of all, that is, I think, an admission of the fact that he's lost it. But secondly, you know, the struggle we are talking about, which is a struggle to restore rule of law, to restore democracy, a struggle that empowers people, because we are not just talking about replacement of Museveni. In fact, if we are talking about replacement of Museveni, it would be an easier task. The reason we have taken the route we have taken is not because our objective is not the replacement of Museveni. Our mission is the replacement of a system that is based on a minority domination.
There's a question.
And inherently, once you have a system that is not based on a minority domination, then it is accountable.
The question someone would raise is, does a persistent, consistent Dr. Kizza Besigye challenging for the presidency represent that majority that you're talking about? How does Dr. Kizza Besigye, and Ntejasim is watching us, and he says, Besigye, you have consistently accused, he calls him my uncle, of overstaying in power, much as he has been defeating you in elections. How different are you from him, having overstayed your welcome in FDC? By the way, what makes you think that it must be you and only you to remove him from power?
You see, really, Mwangusha, save me from those kinds of ridiculous questions. Because, first of all, I am not the leader of FDC, as you know.
But you have been the candidate of FDC.
Yes, I'm
in the
not,
last three cycles.
But you know that we have a new leader since 5 years ago.
Yes.
For 5 years, I have not been leading any political party. Contesting for an office in the government is not an office of FDC. I have not contested, and I won't contest any office of FDC. The presidency is not an office of FDC. That's ridiculous for anybody to suggest so. The presidency of Uganda is an office in the government of Uganda, not in.
Granted.
So, I have not served any single day in the office of the president. So, where have I refused to go? I was occupying an office of the party, I left it. I am not occupying any office in the government. So anybody who suggests that I am the same as a dictator that has occupied the highest office in our country for more than 30 years must be having something wrong with his head. So, but that aside, secondly, on the question of whether I should be an MP or whatever, you see, the problem is not Parliament is a useless institution in a dictatorship. It has no power. Parliament is a rubber stamp, nothing else. Not just Parliament, all institutions of a dictator.
Isn't that determined by the caliber of people who are?
It's not determined by the caliber.
But I'm afraid we need to take a break.
By the caliber.
As we take a break, I'll read a message from James Nyakahuma. He's watching us all the way from Fort Portal, and he says, "Our president, we supported you during the 2016 general elections, and our votes were stolen. Now you're no longer a leader at FDC, and I don't think there is much coming from Najana Nkumbi. Is there any means we can use to keep you moving? Long live Kano. Museveni as a person will go, but Uganda will remain." Let's take a break, and when we come back, we'll be wrapping up this discussion and asking the question of what is it that is there actually a dialogue being planned, or is it imagination, as Ofono Pondo tried to mention during his press conference a few weeks ago. Welcome back to this last segment of On the Spot, and we'll be opening our phone lines. I can see a very active Twitter debate on the show. Please keep the discussion going. We even after the show ends, both on our social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, and WhatsApp. Actually, debate should continue going on. I put a question just to you just before you took the break, but what keeps coming up is the consistent, persistent presence of Dr. Kizza Besigye. Let me just add something small to my earlier question. Are you, as Dr. Kizza Besigye, determined to ensure that you will be president of this country? You just said you have never occupied that office. Is that your life's goal?
Absolutely not. And Mark, you know, people keep on saying Besigye has stayed there. I have never stayed using any coercive means.
It doesn't matter.
Yes, it matters. It matters. It matters, obviously, what means you use to stay. I didn't come into the opposition using coercive means. There were people in the opposition I found in the opposition.
Yeah, but you can develop yourself into a dominant force in the opposition.
Okay, so if I have what has developed me into a dominant force is not illegitimate means. It must be simply that what I do attracts the attention and support of people. And that does not stop anybody who feels that what I represent is wrong coming up and presenting what they think is better to the same people. That is what we are fighting for at the end of the day. So don't sit in your home and say, Besigye, what he's doing is wrong. Step forward. Do what you think is right. and seek the support of the people that you think are wrongly supporting what we are doing.
Isn't it a question of isn't a question of leadership
So,
on its own for you to say, yes, where I am, I do not think I give opportunity to other people sufficiently to come up and challenge for this position?
how haven't I given opportunity? I have told you that I led our party for 7 years. I had an opportunity to lead it for 10. According to our constitution, I stepped down well before time. And one of the reasons indeed I gave to our party was that it was necessary to have a replacement well ahead of the next election, so that the new leader would have the opportunity to popularize their own ideas and so on and so forth. So I have not stopped anybody, any opportunity to do whatever they want to do.
We're not dealing that. We need to go back to the question of the dialogue, which I put
on the question of the...
Is there something
and
serious?
Maybe before we leave that, the question of my role. I told you my role, my mission is not to become president. By the way, in my entire growing up, I have never sought to lead others, whether in school or in... I've never sought office. So even now, my struggle is not in pursuit of office. What sent me to the bush in 1981 was not in pursuit of office. It was in pursuit of justice. What I'm fighting for even now is in pursuit of justice. And as long as...
If you can just dwell a little bit more on that. We can look across the world to find somebody who says they set out in pursuit of office or in pursuit of power. President Museveni told the world during the struggle you are part of, and at the time he took oath, I think on the 29th of January 1986, he said, I am not a career politician. I am a soldier. And he promised at that time and said, I do not intend. I just want, you promised together with him then, that you only wanted to reorganize the country, lead the transitional period, hand it over to civilian authority. 31 years later, we are still counting. If you look anywhere in the world...
Again, you are missing the main thrust of our struggle. The main thrust of our struggle is that people should not depend on our goodness and the claim of it. They should depend on their strength to contain us. Anybody who wants to have any leadership role, people must have power over them. And that is why,
and when people are emasculated,
yes,
like they have been,
yes, then it doesn't depend on you. Then it doesn't depend on you to say, now I am still here, I want to be here. No, then they have power to throw you out if you are not doing what they want.
But you talk about coercion, you talk about manipulation, you talk about all these things.
And the struggle we are in is to develop the competencies within the population to overcome that. And once they have overcome it, it's not reversible.
And if someone put the same question to you and say, Dr. Besigye, you emerged on the opposition scene 20 years ago. What capacity have you built among the people you say you have built that capacity with to be able to realize their power that still presents you as the dominant face of the opposition?
Well, as I have said, if we fail to build that capacity, there will be no change anyway. Because it is that capacity that is going to cause change.
So you think you have built it?
Oh, yes. It's
where is the evidence that you have built it?
Oh. What I have just been telling you, the mounting assertiveness, the mounting organization, it's not even just in terms of seeking political power. You know, those women you saw in Nakasero who closed their shops and said we are fed up with the people.
If you talk about it from the political lens, that massive assertion of the women has not created a second Besigye, a third Besigye, a fourth Besigye in this country, working where I work as a journalist.
Why do you think they have?
Keep asking. If you looked around for presidential candidates and people who are going to be taken seriously, you won't find a pool.
You see, again,
Why?
The challenges are numerous in respect of what it takes to be a leader in this kind of situation. But don't go away with the impression that there are no leaders coming up. I've just been telling you what happened with the traders in Nakasero. Do you think I was there? Was I part of what they did?
Norbert Mao has just suspended Betty Namboze because of a power struggle within the Democratic Party. You saw what happened to the UPC. You have seen what happened post-you in the Forum for Democratic Change.
What has happened in Forum
No,
for
I mean the
Democratic
contestation.
The contestation is perfectly all right.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what we are fighting.
Why do you think that Uganda political struggle, political growth, tends to be structured around people competing along the same line and not competing going upwards?
Oh, they compete going upwards. How many times have I competed with General Muntu?
Yes, you have competed, but he doesn't get.
Well, it's a struggle. He's been coming up. He himself is competing with others.
Yes.
That is all development. So I don't know what you are talking about. But let me go.
We have phone calls, but I wanted you to respond to the question of, is there actually any dialogue or is it just talk?
Well, first of all, I told you that whether there is or there isn't will be determined by whether the regime feels that it's no longer tenable to maintain what it's been doing. That's what will determine whether there will be dialogue or not.
And the position is?
And my assessment
is
that it's not tenable. Whether they realize it is a matter for themselves. You know,
are there actual efforts?
You know, I was amused when I saw Mrs. Museveni saying, I don't know where this anger is coming from. You know, it's very telling that actually it's likely that they don't know the kind of anger that is in the country.
Let me go back to my question. I hear you on that, but let me go back to my question. Are there actual efforts towards organizing a dialogue?
Oh yes, there have been numerous initiatives, as we have said before, since last year by different groups seeking to establish dialogue. And let me be clear. First, I have seen, of course, all kinds of people trying to spin on this dialogue. One, even to suggest that I have talked to Mr. Museveni. I have not talked to Mr. Museveni at all. So that, you know, anybody who is suggesting that I have not talked or met Mr. Museveni in any form or manner. Two, any dialogue will not be about, certainly any dialogue that I am to be involved in cannot be about how Museveni continues. Absolutely not. It must be about how we get a transition from Museveni. And that is why, in respect of, and there are two processes that have been engaged with. One is simply the process of the 2016 election, which I talked about earlier.
Yes, you did.
And of course, many people, even on the opposition, have been surprisingly saying, forget about 2016. That's the most ridiculous thing. Because if we have won the election, we have evidence, we won the election. If we forget about it, what then will you be looking for in 2021? How will it will then have given a template for those who want...
But the moment you put 2016 on the agenda, you don't expect Mr. Museveni to come to that discussion.
He doesn't have to.
Okay.
Who says he must come? If he doesn't come, that is his business. But that is a demand we have made since
If he doesn't come,
year.
who sits on the other side of the table?
There doesn't have to be any dialogue. You see, let's make no mistake. I have been very clear to Ugandans. A dictator is removed by struggle, not by talking, not by any means, any other means. A dictator is removed by struggle. Part of the problem we have are simply some people who, for different reasons, don't like to struggle.
Okay, I'm afraid we need to take some callers because there are many who have been waiting. Hello, yes, we can hear you. Your name and where you're calling from?
My name is Sarah Kajingo.
Yes, Sarah. Go ahead with your question or comment.
Yes, good evening, Charles.
Good evening, Sarah. Very nice to hear from you.
Yes, and thank you for hosting Dr. Besigye. Good evening, Doctor.
Good evening to you.
Yes, I've been listening to... Yes, I've been listening to you.
Sarah, you're apparently listening to yourself. Can you turn down the volume on your TV set?
Yes, I have.
Sure, thank you.
Is that better now?
Yes, much better. Go ahead.
I have.
Yes, yes, we can hear you better.
Yes, I've been listening to Dr. Besigye, and I have listened to him for many years.
Go ahead.
Yes, now, I really wonder why he sounds very, very angry. And that has been my concern and many others for quite a long time.
Okay.
Because you know, Doctor, that, yes, it's true, Ugandans have some concern, there is poverty, unemployment, but it is not right for a leader of your caliber to say, to build a monster such as radicalism. Because even if you became president, you wouldn't want your business district disrupted the whole day. So when you say that your mission has never been to become president, but yet you have been candidate for president 4 times, it doesn't sound convincing.
Okay.
But the reason I called Doctor, I happened to get an opportunity to work with General Saleh when I was a student. And I know that, and I don't even have the permission to say this, but because it is in the public realm, I thought I should ask and seek clarification from Dr. Besigye, and it will help me judge him as a leader, whether we can one day choose him or not if he says the truth.
Okay.
I happened to be working one day, and General Saleh said, yes, the national resistance movement has residual issues of poverty, so many others. They constituted themselves into a historical forum. So as a person around the office, I would get to know, sometimes would prepare documents, General Saleh commendably and consistently saying, no, our struggle now is not the politics that is sorted by the Constitution, but how do we help our people to earn an income? And a mission he has pursued for so many years. And so they go, they meet. After some months, Dr. Besigye, who was part of the historical forum, part of that meeting with General Saleh and others, instead used those very ideas, papers they should have presented to President Museveni and others as historical leaders, as revolutionary freedom fighters to help Uganda, and instead sent them out to the papers. And that is the reason later he said he is standing because of those reasons.
Okay.
And I thought that was very dishonest.
Give Dr. Besigye an opportunity to respond to that.
Yes, Charles.
Yes, Sarah, thank you very much. Give Dr. Besigye to respond to that, because I'd like to give an opportunity to a few more callers to share or put their questions or comments.
Well, first of all, on the question of anger, as you know, this is not the first time I'm hearing the question of Besigye is angry from NRM, you know, adherents or workers. Anger, first of all, is not just looks. I have never been violent. I have never, in my entire time in this political struggle, I have never engaged in any violence. That is the effect of anger. You express it by being violent. I have never. I have been aggressed very violently by those who claim I am angry. So who is angry? Secondly,
are you angry or not?
Secondly, the question of building popular resistance is not making the country ungovernable. No. It is making the country governable according to people's will. Therefore, anybody who subsequently tries to govern without the will of the people, the people have the capacity to challenge you and subdue you. That is the whole idea of what you call radicalism. It's not radicalism. It's citizen empowerment. Our citizens right now are held as captives. They are slaves in their own country. Indeed, it's not surprising that even some are being sold to Arab world where to become slaves there. Prisons in Qatar, in Arab Emirates are full of Ugandans who are crying for help, who were sold there. You know? So we have a situation which is dire in the country. And, you know, I was just telling you before she asked about Mr. Museveni asking where all the anger of Stella,
Mrs. Museveni said.
Mrs. Museveni, yes. Where the anger of Stella Nyanzi, Dr. Stella Nyanzi was coming from. Dr. Stella Nyanzi is not in politics. What Mrs. Museveni misses, and quite obviously Kajingo, is that we have a very angry population. And she should actually, I think, laud us for helping the population to make sense of their anger and to organize so that their anger is not just dissipated in all kinds of confused ways that can cause anarchy.
Okay.
That's what we are doing.
Let's move on to the next question because we need to speak more people.
On the question of Saleh and what she seems to have learned from him, I would advise you, Sarah, if you want to make a judgment, listen to the other side. Now, you only listened to your boss, Salim Saleh. You have never asked me my own side of the story. And you have made a judgment that I was dishonest because of what Saleh told you.
That you stole documents.
Yes,
you stole documents and information.
I don't think Saleh is the most honest man to believe.
Let's pick another caller. Hello? Hello? Do you have a caller? Hello? Hello?
Hello.
Yes, we can hear your name and where you're calling from.
Charles, my name is Aria Kazon. I'm calling from Kamota.
Go ahead.
Yes, good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I salute Dr. Besigye. In the first place, I want to empower again Dr. Besigye. I've been following him for quite so many, 20 years. I thank him for standing very tall in his political role. And I want to laud him again to continue. There's a reference book. They said that if a dictator ever enters into this land, then it will be at the fault of those who keep quiet. So by this, I will still continue to blame those who call Dr. Besigye lauding. They call it radicalism and so on and so forth. They call it in any kind of way. I want to laud him, and he should remain strong, stand strong, and still continue to fight more, because we don't need a dictatorship and it is at the fault of those who keep quiet, and they want him to keep more quiet because they want to eat it from the grassroots level. So
thank you very much.
At that.
Thank you very much. Do we have another caller? Hello? 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 Yes, we can hear you. Hello?
Yes, good evening.
Good evening, sir. Your name and where you're calling from?
I'm Mutebi, calling you from Bukoto.
Yes, Mutebi, go ahead with your question or comment.
My question to Dr. Besigye is, his approach seems to be, his approach seems to be one of vengeance. Now, if he's to take power, are we going to see that attitude continue? And in any case, will that be a solution to the problems that we have politically? If you say you're going to rule with an attitude of vengeance, he seems to have a lot to sort with President Museveni and the people around him. So how does he guarantee that the people he's threatening will, let go when they know the man who wants
Can I ask you, how have I threatened Mr. Museveni or any around him? In what way, on what?
Through your presentation, the way you talk, the tone you use,
it's the tone that is threatening, but I have never said anything threatening, is it?
All your words.
Which words have I used that are threatening to Mr. Museveni?
Even on screen right now, you've just been saying that if the president doesn't come for talks, let him go. He doesn't have to be there.
Is that a threat?
So is that a threat? That's your sense of threat, eh?
Mr. Mutebi, thank you very much. We have another caller. Hello? Hello? Hello?
Hello?
Yes, sir. Your name and where you're calling from?
It's Hakim calling from Chinda.
Yes, Hakim.
Hakim calling from Chinda.
Yes, go ahead with your question or comment.
Doctor, how long are you going to push with that struggle? How do you conclude that struggle? You keep saying you are struggling, you don't win, you lose, you don't win, you are tear-gassed, you don't do anything tangible, you don't have agents around the country, you don't have, why do you expose people to arm's way?
Do you support the struggle?
Hakim, I think we lost Hakim. Hello? We have another caller. Hello? Hello?
Hello?
Yes, sir. We can hear you. Your name and where you're calling from?
This is Joshua. I'm calling from Dubai.
Yes, Joshua.
Thank you very much, Mwangusha. Thank you very much, Mwangusha, for the show.
You're welcome.
I have one question for His Excellency, the President of the People of Uganda, Dr. Kizza Besigye. Doctor, we support you a lot, and as we can see, all signs indicate that all the people who support you are in for the use of force. So if you have to go by democracy, you will understand that, and you will appreciate that the majority of your supporters would want you to help dislodge the regime, which has turned out to be a dictatorship, as soon as possible. So, what is your take? Are you going to go by the consensus of your supporters, or you're going to go by what is right, which is actually proving to be slow? I'm confident that your way of doing things will help us dislodge this dictatorship, but it is taking time, and my worry is that if someone who is more, maybe I can say, who is willing to use force came up now, he would easily take away your support or your supporters. What is your take on that, His Excellency?
Thank you, Joshua, for your question. I think you respond. There's someone else called James. James says, you have been organizing the masses against the regime for the last so many years, but people have refused your message. What do you learn from that? And yet you say you have popular support. Can you respond to him, Joshua, and Hakim, because the questions are interlinked?
Yes. First, to Hakim, I think Hakim seemed to suggest that, we are doing this, it has no end, and, it's not effective. So I was asking him whether, you know, first of all, like any struggle, there are people who identify with this struggle. There are people who are threatened by this struggle. Those who have been beneficiaries of the status quo. Those who have no problem with what is going on today in Uganda are threatened by this struggle. They don't want this struggle to succeed. They don't wish it well. They would want it crushed. And therefore, if you are on the other side of the spectrum, what I would advise you is to simply look for means of how to cripple this struggle. Mm-hmm. If you are on this side of the struggle and you think we are not doing enough or are not doing the right thing to take the struggle to a logical conclusion, my advice is step forward. Because I'm only one person, I am only human, I have my own weaknesses, I have my own strength. If you think I'm weak, I am not doing what I should be doing, fine. First, advise what it is you think we should be doing, which we are not doing. But secondly, step forward and do what you think should be done. Mm. Don't just stay there lamenting. Lamentation, if you are on the side that wants change, is not a solution at all. Okay. Now, on the question of use of force,
Joshua,
you see, the means we use are advised by the end we want. The end we want is not just the removal of Mr. Museveni and his regime. The end we want is a new power structure where people are in charge and leaders are servants. You see, Mr. Museveni said, he is not your servant. And he is right. He is not our servant. We are his servants, actually. We are servants of the dictator. That's what happens in this kind of regime. What we want is a complete turnover, that the leader is a servant of the people. In order for a leader to be a servant of the people, it means the people must have power over the leader. That is the end we want. Now, that end is not achieved by using force. Because when you use force, you weaken the population. Only those who have means of fighting become strengthened. Okay. And at the end of the day, when they take over, like we took over in 1986, the one at the head of the force that is taking over has the ultimate power, because orders come from above. The command structure is based on one person at the top. So using force replicates the same system we want to remove. In fact, when Mr. Museveni stood on the steps of parliament and said what is happening today is a fundamental change, it's not just a mere change of guards. Once you use force, inherently you change guards. Okay. You remove the other guards and replace them with new ones. Okay. That's exactly what he was doing at the steps of parliament.
And to James?
And to James, who says people have refused our message. I think if you would want them to refuse our message, you should thank God that they have. Then there would be no problem. Because, mark you, if what we are saying is not embraced by anybody, nobody will even pay any attention to us. I don't think I would even merit an invitation to come and talk to you on this auspicious program. The reason I am invited indeed here is because even NTV recognizes that the opinion I express is not just the opinion of one person, that it has influence behind it.
And so, someone is saying here, I think he's responding to one of the callers. He says, is it Dr. Besigye responsible for armed herdsmen, chifesi, crime preventers, and the like? Aren't these the agents of radicalism, the actual agents of radicalism?
Well, you see, as I have already told you, once you send away people who were earning a living from Kiseka Market, from Park Yard, from the streets, from that whole railway thing that was erased, the people who are working in public factories that were there have been closed. There are no jobs. You are recruiting each face. And so what is happening is the exact byproduct of the regime policies. And it's going to get worse.
Okay.
With the kind of unemployment, with the kind of poverty, and on the other hand, with the kind of opulence of a few people, you'll have a lot of this. Okay. The other thing is that the regime may also be inspiring and encouraging some of the violent actions that we see. That is also something our people should remain cognizant of, because you know, like you saw what happened in Kasese, the massacre, and you know, the horror we saw. All this recruits people into extremism. People want to defend themselves.
How would the regime stand to benefit from such?
Well, of course, they hope that they are instilling fear. That's the whole basis of any...
Okay. I think that's well answered. Let me pick one or two more callers, and then we'll come and conclude. We'll come back into the studio and conclude. Hello? Hello? Hello?
Hello?
Yes, sir.
Hello.
Your name and where you're calling from?
My name is Trevor. I'm calling from Bunga.
Yes, Favor. Keep it short. Keep it brief, rather.
Colonel, we actually respect you. Some of us are in our age group. But the multi-million question is, if you're doing a democratic change, how come you tell the party head of that party?
How come?
Why haven't you let go?
How come what?
How come you still the head?
Go ahead.
Yes, why haven't you let
asking
go?
Why haven't I?
How come you're still the head of that party? Why haven't you let go? Okay. Favor, you have is that your question? I hope we have captured it.
How am I the head of the party anyway? Maybe you should explain a little.
No, I think he's gone off. Hello, let's pick one more and then you respond at once. Hello?
Hello, Charles.
Yes, sir.
I'm called Baker from Ginger.
Yes, Baker.
And I'm looking at Dr. Besigye having a lot of people around him who don't really share the same ideology with him. And these, over time, have responded silently and associated with people who are driving a negative agenda against what he stands for. How is he going to deal with these people? How is he dealing with these people?
Would you be more specific or give an example, Baker? Because that might help us to get the right answer.
Okay, we're looking at people who are silencing the question of the post-election. He is saying, okay, that in this struggle, for us, we are not putting down the people's government. We're saying we are together with the people's government, and we're saying no to the illegitimacy. And very many people around him, of course, we are talking about the opposition, have dropped it. And how is he coping up with this?
I get it.
Thank you. I think we get your question. Could you respond to this? Let me just add one more. I think I have a question here from one of our listeners. He says, isn't it high time, that's high time you materialized the talks and plans of the struggle? How could you handle the issue of unemployment to us, the youth? If I don't know how you deal with the question of unemployment. He leaves it hanging and says to the youth.
Yeah, well, first of all, to Favor, I suspect you have no knowledge about the workings of FDC. FDC works through organs of the party, which start in the village and culminate in the national executive. The national executive is the one which is led by the party leader. So these organs of the party make decisions on behalf of the party and implement their decisions. I am not a member of any of these organs. I don't sit on the National Executive. I don't sit on the Working Committee. I don't sit on the National Council. I don't sit. So and the people who sit there and run the party are there. So I don't clearly understand what they would mean that I have not left the leadership of FDC. What some people think is that if I leave the leadership of FDC, I should stop being in politics. I should not be politically active. I should retire from politics, go and maybe dig and never talk about politics or never struggle. Some people think so. To those, quite obviously, I disagree. I have my inherent political rights as a citizen, whether I belong to any party at all or not.
Is it in pursuance of a political right or a mission? Do you have a mission?
Yeah, but a mission is pursued by rights.
Yes.
The fact that I am, I told you that my struggle is for justice. Actually, even a party can subvert what you are struggling for, and you leave it.
I'd like you to summarize, because we pretty much overshot.
That's how we left NRM. Because our end is not being in parties. Our end is certain political objectives.
Okay.
Now,
if you could
on
summarize.
the question of people who are around me and don't agree with what we are doing, that is perfectly healthy. You know, even in organizations, we don't have the same beliefs.
No, but there are people who have come out. People like Abdul Katuntu, people like Nabila Nagai have come out and spoken strongly. And
about what?
Especially your insistence that the audit must start on the 2016 elections.
Yes, but this is what I'm saying. The fact that we have different views on that does not make us, you know, even come from different political parties. Because every individual has their own individual views. What a political party does is that it aggregates them, and we agree on certain minimums that keep us together.
Have you agreed on those minimums?
Of course.
Where is the evidence that that agreement actually does exist? Or you seem to see people moving in different directions?
No, and again, you know, one who detaches from those minimum in a fundamental way leaves the party, and many have left indeed.
Okay, I'm afraid we can't pursue this further. We need to get out of here. Our time is out.
Yeah, but maybe finally the one, or quite obviously, the one who was talking about how to deal with unemployment, that is a very broad question. But it starts with addressing the whole question of who the resources of this country are serving. As long as people don't have power, the resources don't serve them. They serve the few that have power.
Thank you.
And the policies don't serve them. They serve the few that have power. So I think the long and short of the discussion we are having is that there is a real problem in the country which has not been solved. There is a political problem that translates into an economic, social, cultural problem. We have to start by resolving the political question. And the political question is simple. Who holds the power? As long as it is a few people, you have a problem.
The question is, how will that political question be resolved?
It will be resolved through struggle, as I have told you. It is through struggle that empowers people, that makes people aware, awake, that makes people be able to organize and have the competencies to wrestle power from the few who have it, so that they can enjoy it.
Will that be on the ballot 2021? Will it be through different means?
You see, I have pointed out that the election is only relevant for two things in a dictatorship. An election, if it is organized by a dictatorship, we participate in it for two main reasons. One is to use the opportunity, the unique opportunity of the election, to increase the awareness of the people in the struggle that I am talking about. Two, to increase the organizational competencies of the people so that they are able to struggle and wrestle the power.
So it doesn't matter whether you take the power or not?
No, it
does it matter?
In the election?
In that election?
No, it doesn't matter. If you don't take the power during the election, you continue struggling, and you don't have to take power through an election. You take power when all the components are in place and you are able to overwhelm the dictatorship. You take power. Museveni did not take power through an election.
They created a dictatorship.
Absolutely.
You can't be advocating for the same route.
No. What I'm saying is an struggle to remove a dictator does not end with an election.
Thank you very much, Dr. Colonel Kizza Besigye.
Neither does it end with the talks.
Thank you very much, Colonel Dr. Kizza Besigye, for making time for the show.
My pleasure.
Since I have the opportunity, I will extend a happy birthday in advance. It will be your birthday, I think, on Saturday, so, which is the day after tomorrow.
Yeah, growing order.
Growing order. Thank you very much.
Those who want me to retire, I may be getting close to retirement.
I don't know, the experiences we are seeing tell a different story. When Trump takes over at 70, Comrade Mugabe is growing stronger, Yoweri Museveni is growing stronger, so age is no longer a significant factor, maybe.
Well, that's why I'm struggling against them.
Thank you very much to you all our viewers for making time to be on the spot, and especially those of you who called us and gave us feedback. The debate continues on our social media platforms, especially Twitter, Facebook, and WhatsApp. Continue the discussions, continue sharing ideas and views. What will it take to achieve a political settlement in this country? I've been Charles Mwangu Shampagi, sitting in for Patrick Kamara. Have a good night.